like that we're live on the internet. That really, it is. It's the best song. I love that song so much. It's so good. I really do think it's a Pavlovian response, though. I think that I'm just happy to be here, and the song has been connected to that. So I'm waiting to hear it like out in public one day, not during this.
Just out at a nightclub.
Yeah, and be like, whoa, yeah. It's a new banger at the nightclub. It's like, oh, that slaps. Yeah, that's definitely gonna happen one day. But no, I don't know. It's got to be, random free use music that we found somewhere. So imagine like it's gonna be the opening to some grocery store announcement or whatever. If I went to grocery stores, which I don't, but because I don't go anywhere with the cash register. Fun fact. You know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, unless it's like a restaurant. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't go to places.
And that's cheating.
What, restaurants?
You can't make a conditional statement and then or a definitive statement and then have conditions.
But you know what though? I say that just to be safe, but I'm pretty sure that it even then doesn't qualify because I don't go to like a Chipotle, and I don't know what other some like decent restaurants might have a cash register. That's what throws me off. Like Cracker Barrel technically has a cash register somewhere in there, but I don't.
When you first come in, they have a cash register. They have a line of cash registers.
Right.
Yeah, on the side with all.
Have you been to a Cracker Barrel?
I have been to a Cracker Barrel.
Your statement is null and void. I'm
but
sorry.
I only ate on the food side. I didn't buy anything from the store.
Nope. So, statement. All Science doesn't care what you believe in.
Fair enough. Well, I generally don't often go to places with cash registers.
There you go. That's a much better statement.
Yeah. I try to avoid cash register places because I don't buy regular things from stores. And I don't see a reason to go to grocery stores or malls or any of those places. I have the internet and I've got people.
And I don't mean to be a pain in the neck, but next thing you're going to be doing is saying it's a small world, and that's.
Well, I know
you can't do that.
Rich takes great offense to people saying it's a small world. Because
have either of you ever said it?
Yes.
Yeah, we've all said it, Rich. That's
so I have a question then, because now I have to go on my rant.
Okay.
I have a question. If you said it's a small world, have you ever said, "Wow, what a freaking big world this is. We have nothing in common"? Do you go up to people who you've never met before and you find out that you share nothing in common? There's no instance in your life where you're like, wow, there's nothing we share in common. What a big world this is.
No,
right?
It's a small
no one
world.
does that. And yet, if you were to do that, you'd be doing it all the time because that's the truth. So the one time it sticks out to you where something goes outside of the norm, you want to now make that your norm. And we say, wow, what a small world it is. It's not. It's a tremendously large planet. And yeah. And
the best is Rich tells people this when like someone he knows spots him in a foreign country and they're like, oh my God, we're both in Germany together at the same time. What are the odds? What a small world. And he stops this person who's having this miraculous moment of seeing their friend on the other side of the globe. And he's like, actually, it's not. And he launches into this diatribe to this poor human who just wanted to make a connection with a friend of his in another country. And
my whole family, by the way, knows if they hear someone say it to me, they go, you can watch. It's great because I'll actually look for their reaction now just to get it because they'll see someone say, oh my God, what a small world. And my kids will go, oh no, here it comes. So yeah, I can't help it.
I like having Mike in the back for the laugh track.
Right? Yeah. He makes me feel funny. Isn't he good at that? Yeah, it's great. But yeah, we have people.
Yeah.
Jen is a friend of mine, maybe a good friend, allegedly. Yeah, you did bestow it on me officially.
Yep, confirmed.
Yeah.
Good friend.
And yeah, Jen and I have been friends since she was in high school. No, I think I was done with high school. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's terrifying. And yeah. And now she's my in addition to being my good friend, she's also my estate planner. And my lawyer and confident and also Marie Kondo practitioner. She's in the process of recondoing my home, kind of. We're doing most of the things
slowly, decluttering for sure.
Yeah, we have plans to see it Sunday, and she's going to join me on Saturday at a comedy show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very exciting. And we have Abby. Abby, what is your last name?
Mosher.
Mosher, thank you. I'm sure I knew that, but I forgot. And Abby and Jen, both are with Tomorrow's Rainbow, in addition to their other things. Jen's on the board, and Abby founded Tomorrow's Rainbow. That's correct, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, and currently is operating as its chief person. And we have Rich, who's here all the time, that I'm not going to introduce because who cares what he thinks.
Right.
So Abby, with Tomorrow's Rainbow, can you tell us about Tomorrow's Rainbow and why you did it and who you are and why anybody should care about you?
Right. Well, hopefully they care about our mission a little more than me. But we actually are getting ready to celebrate our 17-year anniversary on October 5th.
That's cool.
And so over the last 17 years, we have supported thousands of children suffering from grief, loss, or trauma. And we got started due to my own personal tragedy. Back in 2000, my husband, my 7-year-old son, Dustin, and I were on vacation in Texas. And we were on a Texas highway and involved in a head-on collision at 65 miles an hour that killed my husband instantly and left my son, Dustin, and I both hospitalized. And so while I was in that hospital, Dustin was in the children's hospital next door, and I could really just focus on one thing, and that it was that it didn't matter what it took, that's what I was going to do to help my son and I heal from the tragedy. And so we're in Texas, have to come back to Florida. Broward County has actually the 6th largest school district in the nation, and I thought there were going to be tons of resources so that my son and I could get support for our grief. And what I found out was that we were fortunate that my husband had just landed his dream job that included great insurance. And so there were no children's grief centers. I put my son in the best private therapy that money could buy, but wondered every week what all the other children were doing that didn't have that insurance benefit and didn't have $150 an hour for therapy. And so that's when this PTA mom decided she was going to change the way grieving children were treated in our community forever. And that's how Tomorrow's Rainbow got started.
That's awesome. Great job. And, we talk about this, Rich and I talk about this regularly because when his son Reese passed away 10 years ago, I don't know why I'm talking for Rich, but, he's often said that, Reese's siblings didn't have any resources, right? Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, there was very little resources available to us. I mean, we have good insurance and we could pay for it. We're on Long Island too, and we're right outside the New York metropolitan area. And you would think that there'd be a plethora of these things. And
you're literally in New York City or right outside New York City.
Right. And there was very little. And there was very little for grief for children, period. And there was literally nothing for the children who've dealt with the loss of a sibling. So there was nothing. We couldn't find anybody who specialized in sibling loss. And it was so upsetting because our first thought is, you've lost a child, and I don't want to lose my other two. I don't mean lose. I mean lose them in a spiritual sense. I think I just wanted to protect them and make them as whole as they possibly could be, and the resources were just scant, and it was frustrating. It was so frustrating on so many levels. It was frustrating for my wife and I, Samantha and I. We couldn't really find grief counseling for parents who've lost children because it's just not a thing. It's very rare, and there were a few, and we weren't really happy with them. It was very clinical and very and there were some great organizations that are out there that do help with grief for the kids, but it wasn't. My girls felt isolated because when they went to these places, it was all about almost every one of these kids was because they lost a parent or a grandparent. And my girls are like sitting there like, okay, we're the only ones who've lost a sibling. So yeah, it's crazy. There's not a lot of resources out for kids who are grieving, period. And then that number drops exponentially for the kids who've lost siblings. And it's always been something that Samantha and I have had on the back shelf of what we've wanted the foundation to do, but we've gotten into so many other things now. It's kind of like, well, if we ever get the foundation where we want it to be, that would be something we would do, but we just haven't gotten to that point yet.
I will say that one of the things that was really important to us when we opened up Tomorrow's Rainbow was that any child that was grieving, that didn't need to be a parent, a grandparent, anybody significant in their life, would get support free of charge. But on top of that, that their caregiver, their adult caregiver, would also get support. So when the children come to Tomorrow's Rainbow, they're grouped in a circle by similarity of age, cause of death, and who died. But while they're in their circle, their adults have the opportunity to be in support group as well, so that we can remove that social isolation and be in a healing, safe setting with people that are like-minded, people with shared experiences.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that people don't understand. Therapy isn't a substitute for what we do, because one-on-one therapy individually with a therapist is different than being around other people who've been through something similar. Therapy is great if someone's experiencing complicated grief, but it's a natural reaction to have yucky feelings after someone dies. That's kind of how it's supposed to go. So getting the kids out on the farm, getting a chance to be around a bunch of people who've experienced something similar makes them feel less isolated, because at school in their class, they may be the only person who's experienced the death of a loved one.
So Abby, what kind of, you mentioned the group circles, which is really cool. What other, therapies, programs, processes do you put the kids through, but, do the kids, engage in?
Right. So we honor where a child is at, which, people come to me and they say, oh, my child's not talking about it. And that's exactly what I would expect, because children grieve in their language, which is through play, through their interactions. And so when you come to Tomorrow's Rainbow, there's actually therapeutic play areas. So we have a sandbox and a water table and a puppet theater and a Lego table and a musical garden and a memorial garden, a teddy bear hospital. There are plenty of places for children to act out their story and what their experience is. So we start out with that opening circle with our introductions, who we are, who died, how they died, a secret question of the day, which is really important because children can't stay in their grief for long periods of time. So we need to lighten it up a bit as well, give them opportunities to take breaks from their grief. After that, they go over and work with the horses, and we have a herd of 13 horses. Well, 2 of those are actually miniature donkeys, and 2 are large horses, but the rest are small. Actually, our smallest horse is 24 inches. And people think, well, it's kind of a petting zoo, but it's not. The horses actually have a really important therapeutic component to our program. They're actually the only animal in the animal kingdom that has that natural ability to mirror your behavior. So when you're working with a horse, you can see what you're giving off to the world. And if you don't like what you see, then you can certainly make adjustments to yourself, and the horse will adjust as well. So great opportunity for self-soothing, self-regulation, as well as there's actually 2 things that are most essential to resiliency in grieving children. And the one is structure and routine in their life. And so you have to do the chores before you can play at Tomorrow's Rainbow, which means you're mucking a stall and grooming a horse. And then the second is how their caregiver is doing, which is why the adult support group is so important to our program as well.
That's awesome. We have an employee here who's a friend of mine, because everyone who works here is my friend. That's how this works. Named Hunter, and she, for her most of her life, has ridden horses competitively, and she has said that, and I don't even know how this works, but apparently, the horse's heart rate is affected by her heart rate. So if she's standing in the middle of the horse pen and it's circling around her and they're doing the things, she has to be conscious of her heart rate, because if she wants the horse to calm down, she can lower her heart rate, and the horse, which is far away from her, will mirror that at the same time. Which maybe Rich could speculate on how the science of that works. I certainly have no idea. It's bizarre, but I find that to be really, really cool. And she says it so matter of factly that it's got to be a thing. And you mentioned it as well, like, because it sounds like magic, right? Like, oh yeah, I make my heart rate go down, and the horse also does this, because we have this, in tune connection. And that sounds woo woo, but apparently it's backed up by all kinds of science and fact, and at the highest levels of competitive, horsing. That's the technical term. It's
Horsing?
Horsing around, if you will. So yeah, I mean, do you know anything about how, why horses have this innate ability, how it works, the kind of the, maybe not the biology, but do you know anything about how it happens?
Not a clue.
Are you, Abby? I was going to ask Abby too. Okay.
You know what? I wish I did, but I don't. But I can tell you that it is not voodoo. It is certainly, as a matter of fact, last week, one of the things that happened at Tomorrow's Rainbow about 2 years ago is we started seeing more children that were coming to us for bereavement who had also experienced trauma. And so we actually expanded our mission to be able to provide individual trauma therapy as well. And we do that in the way that we know how, which is through equine assisted psychotherapy. So last week I was with a client who, it was actually his last session, and I think he was 9 years old. And he chose to work with Sparky, who is our horse that probably shows his teeth the most. And people think, well, Abby, you could have whatever horses you want. How come you have one that shows their teeth? And I will tell you exactly why. So he took Sparky out and he groomed Sparky. And when he went to bring Sparky back, Sparky started to show his teeth. And so this is a child who had been in therapy with us. So not only are we processing our trauma, but we're gaining coping skills. We're learning coping skills and those breathing exercises that you can do to calm yourself down. And we actually do that with the horse, which is a whole nother long story. But so anyway, we're in the stall and the horse is starting to show its teeth. And the therapist in the team says, "What do you need to do?" And he immediately stopped and he breathed in through his nose and let it out. And the horse kept showing its teeth. And I said, "No, you have to believe it." And he breathed in through his nose and out. And the horse made its head go forward to the front again, so it wasn't turning back to show teeth, and dropped his head. And the child did that. He calmed himself. The horse calmed. And then he was able to take the halter off of the horse, which was really what was going on, is you have to reach under the mouth in order to do that. And you're doing that with a horse that's showing its teeth. So by calming himself down, he was able to calm the horse down. And imagine all through life adversities now, how he's going to be able to breathe in through his nose and slowly out through his nose and calm himself just like he did that day in the stall with Sparky. So it's pretty amazing.
That is really cool. And
so I'm a liar.
What's that?
I'm a liar.
You do know?
You said I said I had no clue. And I basically said that because I just didn't want to bore you.
But why would you do that?
I don't know. I don't know. I'm like, I've been very cognizant. Samantha's told me I talk too much. So now I'm like, maybe that's what's been bothering me. Because you asked me before. And
before we started,
you talk too much. You should let other people talk. And I don't know. I've had this thing now lately where I feel like maybe I shouldn't say anything. And
but doesn't Sam know that you're the most interesting person in the room at all times, and that's why you're talking?
Yeah. Tell her that.
Yeah.
So I don't know for a fact, but I'm going to base this on what I do know about domestication and artificial selection, and dogs. So, and I'm gonna say that I'm gonna say there's about 90% certainty that this also would apply to horses since they were domesticated in much the same way. Dogs have over time, since they basically were wolves to now. So we know that the first dogs and humans kind of coexisted 60,000 years ago. So the human dog relationship has existed for about 60,000 years. And that probably started with the first wolves that basically produced a greater amount of oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone. And the wolves that produced slightly greater amounts of oxytocin were more likely to accept being nearer to humans and accepting things from them without being aggressive. And over time, that started to get to the point where the wolf would stay with the humans, not so much as a pet. And then humans would bring them in and started raising the pups. And then the pups that were more likely to show a response that was mirrored in the humans, like wolves can't move their eyebrows up and down. Okay. But dogs can. And that was a trait that was selected for artificially by humans. And we probably didn't do this on purpose. It was just because of that biological connection that we had, that when a dog made the sad eyes or moved its eyebrows, we recognized that, and it helped us to bond, which was more likely to produce the oxytocin, which bonds people, bonds animals. And so that connection formed, and that connection was reinforced through years of breeding and selection. I'm going to guess that with horses, the exact same process occurred. So and horses are a great example of selective breeding. The selection process for horses probably chose some of those same factors that, especially since it's an animal you're riding on. I want to have that connect. I don't want, I'm not going to ride there's reasons why I don't see people riding rhinos. So,
Speak for yourself.
And my guess is, based on what I know about the domestication of dogs, is that it's probably much the same path. And by the way, it's also why, conversely, and this is interesting, that cats don't give a crap about you. And the reason they don't give a crap about you is because they've never had to. Whereas dogs had to develop this system to basically become empathetic with us. Cats never did, because cats served another purpose in the fact that they were great hunters, and they were great at killing rodents. And rodents being almost the number one vector of disease in humans, it was seen as a benefit to have this predator in your house. That basically cats in that same time frame have evolved almost none. So there's basically been no change in the domestic cat in like 60,000 years. And yet dogs have changed tremendously. And again, it's because of those selective pressures. So my guess is that horses are the same way.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree a little bit with you, because then how do we explain how we can take a wild Mustang and tame them to be ridden? And I'm wondering whether or not there's not more about.
Well, I'm going to go out and tell you that wild horses are not wild horses. So the modern horse never existed outside of what humans did, selectively breeding them. So horses that you find out in the wild were once are the progeny of previously domesticated horses. So the modern horse, and this I can speak from fact, the modern horse would not exist without human beings. So they are all descendants of a horse that was at one point domesticated. So they would have those genes, or at least would have, they may not have, depending on the number of generations that those wild horses were separated from humans, you'd probably lose some of that, but not a lot, because they're all going to be descendants of those domesticated horses. So
yeah, do we think that there is any thing to the fact, though, that they are prey animals and also herd animals, and picking up on a heartbeat is important, because if somebody's heartbeat is rapid, then that means I'm in danger. I better take off and run. I'm wondering.
Sure. I mean, there's, and I would say that there's a whole bunch of stuff that I'm sure that if I were to get into the physiology of it and try to see what those studies show, I'm sure that you'd find a whole bunch of those connections. It would be, I mean, it's fascinating to think about it, but as far as making the connection with a person, that connective piece would come through selection, would come through just years of breeding. And just think about it. The horse that you can never get to work with you, the horse that you can never get to, I don't want to say break it in, but that horse is not going to be, that's not going to be the one that says, you know what, I want to make more of these horses. So they're less likely to get bred, and therefore the ones that do get bred, and then over time it's this incredible change. And we see this in the domestication of dogs and in horses. There's a lot of studies on, and I used to teach this when I would teach selection with my students. Horses and dogs have the most documented generations that we can actually track genetically and physiologically of how much they've been domesticated over time and how much the changes have occurred. So it's fascinating when you look at that and you look at the selective process behind it all. So,
and it's my understanding, and I think you talked a little bit about this, Abby, that the reason why you guys use horses and not dogs is dogs pick up on your feelings and then try and fix them, right? If a dog knows you're sad, they're going to come over and like hang out with you and cuddle you and lick your face and kind of be therapeutic. But a horse is a mirror, right? It's a reflection back of what you're feeling. Is that right?
So we know that even when owners abuse their dogs, that dog is still going to be loyal. With a horse, a relationship with a horse mirrors actually what a successful relationship with people should look like, which is mutual respect, trust, and understanding. So that relationship is very different with a horse than it is with a dog. You've seen, terrible dog parents where that dog will still follow them around and be loyal. In a horse, that's not going to happen. You have to have that mutually respectful, trustful relationship in order to be successful.
It's really cool. So what does tomorrow's rainbow have on the horizon? There's a pun in there somewhere with rainbows and horizons, I'm sure. You're doing this great work already. What are you hoping to achieve going forward?
Yeah, so certainly a few things that we have. We were fortunate just to receive a grant. It's called Brave of Heart, and that is for children whose loved one died by COVID. And so those groups start September 17th. And one time a year, we open the farm to the public. So if you're local in South Florida, on October 16th is our pony jail and bail event, where we lock people in the miniature horse stalls until they raise their bail, which we think we're really funny by spelling BALE, like a bale of hay. And that's just good old fashioned fun fundraiser, raise awareness for the mission, as well as raise dollars so that we can continue to provide our services free of charge.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a really fun event to bring kids out to. We have selfie stations, and they get to be up close to tiny little horses. And I know that for me, I had someone who worked at Tomorrow's Rainbow and kept saying, come do a tour, come see. And I was like, I really don't have a lot of time right now to add any other charities onto my plate. And eventually gave in and went to go see
I was going to ask,
tiny horses.
How did you meet Abby?
After I went there to go tour the farm, and that person was very smart to drag me out there because as a program facilitator now on the board, but there's just something about those little horses.
How tiny are they?
Well, like she said, our smallest is 24 inches. So we're talking like a Labrador
right,
size.
like a little dog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, Jen, I actually think that your dog is bigger than Feather by a lot.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't ride Feather?
No.
Is she light as a feather?
No, we actually don't really ride any of the mini horses there because they're all they're small and they're doing other good work.
Right, yeah, being adorable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what do you do then?
So I started out as a program facilitator. So those are the adults that help facilitate the bereavement groups. So we sort of set up and facilitate the art projects that they're doing, helping keep them on target with the horse tours and that sort of stuff. But I think 2-3 years ago, I joined their board of directors. So we help spread the word, let people know what we're doing, why it's important, and help with the fundraising and strategic planning, things like that.
Nice.
Because Tomorrow's Rainbow isn't just important for people who have kids or think that they might have kids who might find themselves in this kind of a situation. Everyone should care about this because we know that children who are supported in their grief and trauma are less likely to commit crimes in the future. They're more likely to graduate from school. They're less likely to have substance abuse issues and things like that are just better for society in general. So it's not just important for kids and parents in Broward County.
That makes sense. Abby, if there's other parents who are in a similar boat as Rich, who they've lost a child or they've had some other, or they have children who are going through some kind of grief or bereavement. Even 10 years out, I'm sure Rich's children could still benefit from therapy of some kind. I'm sure it's ongoing. If they're not in Broward County, what should they do?
Right. So there are, every year I actually network with over 300 grief centers nationwide. The National Alliance for Children's Grief, which is childrengrieve.org, has a great resource so that you can find a bereavement program in your community. If you forget that, just reach out to me and I will help you connect with a grief center in your area, most certainly. But it's childrengrieve.org.
Gotcha. And what about what things can parents do, outside of that to help their children through the process?
Yeah, absolutely. Get them with others. Doing our grief work can be scary, but if it's done well, then once you connect with others that have also had somebody in their life that has died, it is going to open up your world to beginning to have a new relationship with that person who's died. And that's a relationship with your memories, not the relationship with the living being anymore. But that's what we want, is continued bonds. We want to be able to celebrate them and have them continue to influence and impact our lives every day.
Is there a misconception about children's grief or how children grieve that you think it should be dispelled?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've spoken, so many times on this, and they're children, they're fine, or they're playing, they're fine. But the grief is an emotion that if we keep bottled up inside, eventually it is going to come out. And we actually know that 1 year, but 2 years down the road, if we don't do anything about it, that's when we're going to start to see those negative behaviors that are going to creep up. And so taking them to a place that specializes in children and not treating them as though they have a mental health diagnosis that might be require problem solving or being solution focused, being with people with shared experiences so that you can take those yucky feelings that are bottled up inside and bring them out in a way that makes sense to you, because everybody's grief journey is different. So we want to make sure that nobody looks at it as one size fits all. And just because your children aren't talking about it doesn't mean they're not grieving. Get them to a place where they can have those emotions come out and have the connection of being with others.
Oh, that makes good sense. Rich, you have any questions?
Not so many questions as kind of observations and comments based on just my own experience with my daughters. Both of my girls started, we went through a couple different therapists, I guess, or counselors, until we found one who really was great with my girls. And what's interesting is that my younger daughter, Lorelai, and there goes my dogs, that's the problem with having the door open.
That's the name of the dog is Princess Diana of
Themyscira.
That's Themyscira, thank you.
Which is
Wonder Woman. Jen dresses up as Wonder Woman for children in hospitals because she's a saint. So.
I do.
That's
with
awesome.
One of my best friends who I met through Tomorrow's Rainbow. She's actually a child psychologist, and so we go dress up as superheroes and princesses and wander around the hospital and do cool stuff.
I have lots of Wonder Woman in my house. There's one right over there. There she is. Yep. Anyhow, sorry, go ahead.
I would love to dress up as. There's no fat superheroes though, so.
There's Fat Thor.
We talked because the girls every year want to do a theme for Halloween. So this year they wanted to do different Marvel characters, and I'm like, I could be Viking Thor. I'll just keep growing the beard out.
There you go. Good.
So yeah, or Fat Thor. But back to what I was saying. They both started with the same counselor, and Lori kept going, and to this day continues to see a counselor, and it's great. Whereas Abby is the more kind of insular. She's kept more of it in and tries to avoid a lot of it. So it's so true that they grieve differently, that they process it differently, and I know you talk to any parent, you talk about how your kids can be so different. Like these creatures came from us. How could they be so different? And yet each of them is so much. They're so different from each other, and that same relates to the grief. But I was thinking of something because this made me think when Eric had mentioned this at first a couple weeks ago about having you guys on. I remember something now that came up when after Reese died that summer, we went to Germany because the girls, we had an au pair. Her name was Melina, and she was Reese's au pair, and obviously my girl's au pair. And she became a part of our family. She just, the first moment I spoke to her on the phone, I'm like, this is the one. And as soon as she came into our house, she was just like, it was just another family member, and she remained so until this day. So after Reese had passed, it was without question, we're gonna go be with Melina. And we went to Germany, and Melina's aunt owns a horse farm out in Germany. And the girls had no experience with horses or anything like that. But they're like, would you like to go see them? And so we did. And we took the girls, they went to go to the horse farm, and Lori got with these horses And one of the things that my wife, I'll never forget, we would say this all the time, is like, she lost her smile. Lori lost her, like, anytime you'd ask her to smile, she'd give you like that contrived smile, you know,
The one I give every time.
right, the one that doesn't come from those real feelings of happiness. And when we got her to that horse farm, we had her, and she went up on the horse, and we took a picture of her, and I remember my wife and I saying, like, "Oh my God, that's her smile. There's her smile." And that just stuck with me, that you know, I've got that in my head, that there was that smile, and they just were so happy being there, and it was really amazing. And it's funny, I didn't think anything other than oh, that was cool, they were with the horses and stuff, but I think it's amazing that you guys took this and said, oh, there's something there, and there's something to help kids in a way that I would say it's unconventional, because I don't think the first thing I think of when I think of my grieving child wasn't a horse. So,
Right.
And I love anything that goes outside of thinking inside the lines. So, and I think you were right, because you'd mentioned about treating it as a one-size-fits-all thing. And that was my big frustration with our girls, is that everything was like one-size-fits-all, cookie cutter, and there wasn't, where was the stuff that was giving them a meaning, a relationship, like, this pertains to me. Like, to this day, they still complain to me that, it was important that we did it, Dad, but a lot of it felt disconnected from me. Like, I didn't feel like I truly belonged. And I thinking about what you do is like, the horse isn't going to do that, right? They're just going to connect, and that's so important. So I think that's awesome. I do have a question. Where did you come up with the name? Because to me, names are important, and that's.
So it's actually something that I don't share often, because we're a secular program, and I don't want anybody, to get confused. But it actually comes from Genesis, the sign of the rainbow, and that today might not feel like we're going to find our joy again, but there is always hope in looking for that rainbow, and God sent the rainbow so that Noah and everybody in the ark would know, just hang on. And so that's where it came from. Today might be tough, but there's always tomorrow's rainbow. That's
beautiful. And I will point out that it's interesting how you can have these overlaps. I am not religious at all. I'm a science person. So, but we call my daughter Melina our rainbow. And of course, I look at it very scientifically, because a rainbow will appear after a storm. Mm-hmm. And it's those conditions that can only occur after the storm that are ripe for creating that rainbow. And that rainbow, that thing of beauty, appears after something destructive and terrible. So my Melina, she asked me, she's going to turn 8, and she asked me, why do you call me my rainbow? And I explained it to her, of course, because it's a scientist. I said, well, sweetie, when do you see rainbows? And she's like, after a storm. And I said, well, there you go. You are a rainbow after the storm. And so I love the meaning behind it there. So that's awesome.
I was actually going to mention Melina, because you said that Lorelai was your youngest daughter at the time, which is true. But Melina obviously came after Reese passed away. But you said she's gone through her own kind of, I would use the word grieving, but her own relationship with Reese, even though he predated her.
Yeah, I mean, Abby and Lori sometimes remind me that they're jealous of her, because she doesn't carry the baggage that they do. And I said, well, they didn't have I was like, Melina didn't get the direct trauma that you guys got, that, you had your brother ripped away from you. But she has her own grief in that she never got to know him. Yes. So like you got to know him. You got to have memories of him. And she has a different grief from it, because she hears these stories, she sees pictures. What's crazy is that, I've written the books, and I have an animated short and stuff, and she'll go, oh, that's my brother Reese. But it's not really, I think it creates its own issues for her, in which she tries to reconcile that. And I was like, you have to, And yeah, so a kid who never even met her brother, I think she can absolutely grieve over the fact that he's not a part of her life and that she never got to, have that. So
100%. And the feeling of isolation from a family that's all connected by this one individual that she didn't have the opportunity to meet. So her journey is just as important as everybody else's journey in your
absolutely.
family story.
Yeah. And I think my wife and I, we that was something we actually contemplated when we said, do we want to have another child? I'm well aware of replacement child syndrome, and I didn't want her. That was always so important to us, that she never felt like, she was there to replace Reese, or that, that her existence was contingent upon Reese's passing or anything like that. So, which is why I always wanted to spin it for her in a positive. That's why we call her our rainbow, because it's, she's just our thing of beauty that happened after the storm. And, but yeah, to discount, and I think a lot of times parents do this, will discount that she absolutely has feelings over this, and she has a grief. It's just a different grief that we don't understand, right?
Absolutely.
So we don't get it. I don't understand. Maybe in some small way. I mean, I remember my mom had multiple miscarriages, and Sam's had miscarriages too, so they don't have the same weight. I just know from my own grief of losing your child that you've formed this bond with, and that you have, that you've brought into the world, but it's tough nonetheless. And I remember my mom had 4 miscarriages. She had 3 before my sister was born, and then 1 after, and they were all late-term miscarriages. So they weren't caused by genetic anomalies. It was actually caused by my mom's inability to carry the pregnancy to term. And this was back before reproductive technology really is where it is now, which they probably all would have made it to birth, today. And I remember growing up that I always had this weird feeling that I missed out on my brothers and sisters. Like, it was, and to this day, there's like this little piece of me like, oh man, I could have had, so I have to, I feel like with Melina, it's got to be that, but magnified. And there's no way to know. And there's no way to know until, she has the chance to kind of share those feelings with us. And something that's very important. My mom was a mental health professional, so it was very important for me and for my wife that when the girls went through this, that we got them help, because I think so many people, that's another thing, is that so many people disregard our feelings and our thoughts and all of that stuff that's so important. That's such an integral part of our health that we just disregard it. Like, oh, that's not health. That's something different. And it's not. It's your mental health is just as important as your physical health. And we wanted that for our girls. And so any organization that's helping with that mental health, which gets overlooked all the time, is so, so, so important. So important. So I can't thank you enough for what you do. Having been on the other end of it, I know the importance of it, and I know what it does, because my girls are, thank God, are well adjusted, and I think they've taken what's happened with Reese, but they're able to process it. And if they didn't have that, my gosh, I don't even want to think about where they'd be. And I guess I could look to examples of where the kids didn't get that and what happens. And more often than not, it's bad news. And I'm just super thankful that that wasn't the case with them.
Yeah, they're lucky. I think a lot of families incorrectly assume that they can just not talk about it. A lot of kids will come to Tomorrow's Rainbow and they may not even know what the cause of death was for their family member, or they may have other things that their family's not comfortable talking about yet. And I think it's really important that we give them a little bit more education in how to talk to kids, giving the kids the vocabulary that they need. Right. A lot of them may not know, what is cremation, what's a coffin, or different things that would be customary to happen around death. And as an attorney who works in probate and estate planning, I have to talk to adults about death. And, a lot of them are still just very uncomfortable even talking about basic things of, what would you like to have happen if you die or when you die? And I think if we can help kids learn to have that coping skills to handle uncomfortable feelings, the right vocabulary to talk about death, and feeling that they're able to talk about it, just like they would about other things that are going on in their life. We'll have adults that are better able to have those conversations too. So
Yeah, it is a life event, and normalizing their experience is going to take them onto the road to healing and resiliency and joy again. So it's something that we're all going to have to deal with. So making sure that we don't make it taboo, but it is an open conversation and honoring everybody and where they are and how they grieve.
It's funny you mentioned the world got to deal with it eventually. I was literally just telling Mike the other day that due to all of my unique circumstances, cerebral palsy, a wheelchair, the business, that I'm really used to being an exception for everything. And I have this fear that I'm going to have a hard time accepting I'm going to die because I'm so used to being the one that doesn't fit all the other molds. People are like, no, it's happens to everybody. Like, yeah, I'm special. And I've been special in every other way for so long. I have this legitimate concern that I'm going to have like a hard time being okay with this thing that's probably going to happen to me. So
I
yeah,
want to talk about it some more.
yeah, thank you.
Anyway,
Yeah.
Hey, Eric.
I know Rich is immortal, right?
No. I'm not immortal yet, but I used to tell my students, as long as I figure it out before I die, I'm good to go.
Right.
So, therefore, am I immortal right now? No. But if I figure it out before I die, then yes, I will be.
Right.
But I won't know until it happens before I die.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Maybe by proxy you'll take me along with you, But
hell, we just got to make it to the singularity, Eric.
that's it. We're good to go.
I'm just pushing for the singularity.
Yeah, I have this legitimate concern that because I'm so used to getting my way with all these other things that I'm going to try and worm my way out of dying.
I got bad news for you and for myself as well.
Yeah.
You are going to die.
Yeah, I know this intellectually, but I think I have a hard time emotionally around it.
The second law of thermodynamics is it's going to win.
Yeah. My grandmother got to an age where she thought she'd beat it by living too long, because a lot of people die between 60, 70, 80. And she's like, no, I'm good now. I passed it. Like I'm like
I passed the expiration date. I'm good to go.
I'm on the other side now.
Winning.
Yeah. She I'm not gonna die now. She was wrong. She died. I forget how old she was. She was very old. But yeah. So yeah, it's funny. I literally was just telling Mike that the other day that I'm worried about my ability to accept my own mortality because I'm so used to not being the norm for everything else. Fun fact. Speaking of fun facts, every time we do this, which is typically weekly, Mr. Specht, science teacher extraordinaire, gives us a science fact, which he comes up with on the top of his head because he's a crazy person. And also the most bizarre and phenomenal trivia expert I've ever encountered in my entire life. If you don't know, Abby, we do a Jeopardy every day at 3:00, which Jen watches. And I hear embarrassed by this.
No, not embarrassed. I know that I'm one of your loyalist fans.
She is, and and Rich, have you seen Rich chime in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's weird, right?
Yeah. When it's a thrumper, so all three of them are unable to answer the trivia question, then Rich will just type in and hang back, and
Yeah, or sometimes he joins. His face will be in the robot, and but yeah, he's never gotten one wrong.
That's not true.
Right, you did get.
I never officially got one wrong, but there were a couple that we didn't get it wrong, but I was wrong, but someone else got it.
I got it. Yeah, I remember there was one in particular that you got wrong that I got right, which was the highlight of my entire existence.
Yes.
And it was who is
Scarlett Johansson?
Who is Colin Jost married to?
Right.
Or it was Scarlett Johansson. One of them is one direction the other. And I knew the answer because my former roommate was a giant Saturday Night Live fan. But otherwise,
now I know, but I didn't. I didn't know.
Also, Rich doesn't know why he knows all the trivia, which is the best part.
Yeah,
just in his brain somewhere, just living there. But
yeah, I've said it. I've gotten used to just accepting, if something pops into my head, I'm pretty sure it's right. I don't know why it's right, but I'm pretty sure it's right.
It's bizarre. So Rich, you want to give us a science fact to wrap us out here?
Science fact. I'm trying to. This was something that just came up. It's fascinating, and I just was reminded of it. So the planet just narrowly escaped a coronal mass ejection from the sun that most people are not aware of. So I don't know if you guys knew about a week ago they were talking about the auroras being really bright and stuff on the planet.
Yeah.
So the largest coronal mass ejection. By the way, a coronal mass ejection is when the sun literally ejects part of the corona, which is, by the way, means crown in Spanish, and that's why the coronavirus is called the coronavirus, because it has all the spikes. It looks like a crown. So the sun's corona is its crown that you see. So like when they draw pictures of the sun, you see the little spikes, the rays. So that's the corona. So the sun goes through this 11-year cycle, sunspot cycle, in which it has these magnetic disturbances that eject part of its surface right out into space. And if the Earth gets in the way of that, we get what we call a solar flare. And it can hit the atmosphere. When it hits the atmosphere, it activates the ions in the atmosphere and creates these lights, which normally only happens along the poles, and which we call the northern lights, or the southern lights if you were in the southern hemisphere.
The aurora borealis, same thing, right?
Yes, the aurora borealis. So it turns out that we literally just missed this massive ejection, but the largest one that ever hit was in 1859 that we know of. It was called the Carrington event, and it knocked out. It was so powerful that it actually created an aurora that was planet-wide. So it didn't matter where you could be on the equator when it happened. And it was so bright that miners out in Colorado came out in the middle of the night thinking it was dawn, and were like making their coffee and documenting everything, and then realized that, oh my God, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. But it was as bright as it was like a cloudy day. So it was as bright as the sun would be on a cloudy day.
Wow.
That's how bright these auroras were. And it wreaked havoc on our kind of nascent telegraph system. And like telegraph machines were blowing up, and it was crazy. And if that same event were to happen today, we could lose power for up to 2 years.
Wow.
Whoa.
So so most people don't realize we were literally days, we just missed basically being knocked back into the Stone Age by about 2 or 3 days. So next time you pick up that phone and you're like, oh, this is great, I love technology. If you thought, and I don't mean to make you scared, but fear is a good thing. If you thought that the pandemic was bad, we get hit by a CME like that. Yeah. Eric, you know your doomsday prepper stuff, that you may want to hold on to that.
So
we missed it by about 2 days.
Yeah. My power went out for an hour the other day, and I was terrified. Yesterday actually, but thankfully because I am a bit of a prepper, my generator kicked on immediately, and everything was fine for me. My 6 neighbors who were also affected, not so much. But yeah.
Now, if your generator, now this is important. If you had a generator and has electrical circuits in it, if it's a powerful enough CME,
oh no,
it would wipe out even things you had turned off.
Oh.
Yep.
Oh no.
Yeah. So it's effectively an EMP.
Air conditioning is a big priority. I'd be very sad with electricity.
Yeah, my AC died like a week ago. I almost had a heat stroke. I had to go to my neighbor to not die.
Yeah, I read an estimate. It would be the single most costly thing to ever happen to humanity.
Wow.
In terms of economy, and we are completely unprepared for it. So.
Yay! Any kind of mass ejection, but that sounds like especially bad.
Let's follow.
Now the good news is
this comment for Facebook.
Look at this. Susan Williams joins. I butchered that name. I apologize, Susan.
It's Susan joins.
You know Susan joins?
I worked with Sue.
Well, then read Sue's comment then.
So I truly enjoy and learn from every one of these videos. Thank you for the lessons, humor, greatly needed at times, and being such wonderful people. I admire both you and both of you, Rich and Eric. Thank you for doing these videos.
Look at that.
Yeah, now we need some.
You are most welcome, and
cleanse our palate after our EMP discussion.
It's our other viewer. Jen's already here, so we were down to 0. So thankfully, Sue joined in to bring it back to the binary 1 or 0 that we typically existed.
Yeah, thanks, Sue.
Thanks, Sue.
Well, Sue knows there was a funny story when I was teaching. One of the other, she taught home and careers or family. She's gonna get so mad at me for having said that. Sorry, family and consumer sciences. So it used to be called home and careers or home ec. There was another teacher, and I'm not going to mention her name, who taught family and consumer sciences. Who thought it'd be really cool to show the students one day how on the equinox you can balance an egg. Right. And so she showed them, right? Look at this. They're bouncing an egg. And I happened to walk by the classroom and I saw this and I ran into the room and I'm like, that's wrong. And she's like, what? She's like, no, look, it happens. I was like, have you tried that on any other day? No. She's like, I'm told that it works today. I'm like, yes. And it also works on like December 3rd and it works on November 1st and it'll work on June 3rd. It doesn't matter. And she's like, I had no idea. I was like, exactly. I was like, confirmation bias. It's a small world. Yeah. So, and I think Sue knows that story that I literally ran into her room like, no, that's wrong. I just have this compulsion when things are wrong. I have to fix it.
So 2 girlfriends ago, who will never see this, so I don't mind saying this. Her name was Sue Ellen Susan. Her birth name was Sue Ellen. Her middle name was Susan, and she had a last name. So her mom wanted her to be Sue so bad that she made her first and her middle name both Sue. So she was literally Sue, which I called her occasionally. And yeah,
she should have become a lawyer.
She chose a different career path. She decided pornography was better than law, but different strokes, literally in some cases. There we go. Round it out with humor. I knew I could pull it home. All right, I didn't know I was going to get there, but yeah.
Thanks.
Good old porn joke, just to wrap it in.
But dumb ching.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
So now that I've scared you guys,
That is
the good
terrifying.
news is-
Legitimately
the good
terrifying.
news is we are nearing the end of that 11-year cycle, so the chance of that really big CME hitting us is probably not going to happen now since the sun gave out its big one. So you got about another 11 years to prepare. So
I mean, that means my chair would die. You realize that?
Yes.
That was real bad for me. Yeah.
if it's equivalent to the Carrington, and the problem is we have nothing because we haven't had anything as powerful as the Carrington event. Like the last big one was probably 1921, which did cause some problems. Actually, no, there was one in 2012
You just know
We
something.
weren't
that wiped out.
to this. We were going to end on a happy note.
Wait, I'm going to give you some happiness. So there was one in 2012, which knocked out part of the Quebec power grid. But it wasn't bad. It wasn't like they do it on a scale, I think 1 to 4, and a 4 being what we just missed, and the Carrington event was a 4. But the problem is that the Carrington event was so powerful that we have literally nothing to compare it to because we haven't experienced anything like it since. But the problem is if we do, it would be catastrophic for the planet. So not for life though. The thing is you and I could like walk around like, oh, we're fine. Like it wouldn't affect anything biological at all. So this is literally
walk around at all.
of our technology. So this is like
You're walking around.
yeah. So like, well, if you were in an airplane and that happened, that might be bad. But, yeah. But the good news is, if I'm going to end us on a good note, is that we're nearing the end of that 11-year cycle. So got 11 years to prepare.
Here's to another 11 years.
Yay! Yay, mankind! We scooted by another one. So
Good press. Well, thanks, Rich. You're the best.
you're welcome. Nothing like some uplifting, happy news. So.
Warn people. So watch it then at like the 55-minute mark.
Yeah. You'd think the world at large would be trying to prepare for this, but
Yeah, there's very our power grid sadly is it's antiquated enough, and yeah, let's end on something positive. You were pointing out that horses will detect this and will see this in people, and and you'll get. I think we should have anyone who goes for elective office should have to like have horses near them so we can be a judge of them.
100%.
Yeah. You should also make sure they're dog people, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A prerequisite for political office.
I think that makes sense.
If you don't like dogs, it's a little suspicious.
It's a little sus, right?
Sure.
I like dogs. I'm gonna get a dog, I think.
I
Yeah.
support that choice.
Thank you. Rich thinks that everybody in office should have some kind of science background, which I agree with also. Or some science training of some kind.
Oh, we the science education in this country is god awful, and that's coming from a science educator. So
It's your fault.
no, it's not my fault. I tried.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Abby. You're fantastic. Your work is tremendous. How can people find you?
Yeah, you can find us at tomorrowsrainbow.org. Phone number is 954-978-2390, and we're all over social media as well. Facebook is Tomorrow's Rainbow Inc. And check us out, and hopefully we see you at Pony Jail and Vale as well.
That'd be awesome. Jen is the best estate attorney that I've known for more than 20 years, who's sitting next to me. And where can people elicit your services or anything else from you?
So the soon to be updated jennifergomez.com with some input from Eric. I'm gonna put something on there that gives a vibe of dog people only are really the ones who should
Referrals to dog people only.
Yeah, like, you don't have to own a dog, but you have to at least like dogs,
Right.
so that I know that you're gonna have the right demeanor to
be your
be
client.
my client. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I have a question now. Now wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I have a question now.
Yeah.
You mentioned are horse people generally dog people as well?
I think there's a good amount of overlap.
I would say, yeah, overlap for sure. I find that horse people are animal people in
That's
general. So, yeah.
Because I find cat people and dog people very different,
Mm-hmm.
and those are both animals.
I was warned once that horse girls, like girls who compete on horses, are a little bit crazy. But I didn't agree with this deduction. I went on a few dates with some, and that's why I was warned. They're like, oh, by other horse people, by the way. Hunter, who works for me, who does the horses, she was like, yeah, don't date a horse girl. It's a bad idea. You're not gonna be happy with that. But I don't know. All the ones I met were just fine. So
Yeah, you're probably not going to be number one for them, just so you know.
I'm great.
You would be number two.
I want to be a solid third. That is my
Yeah,
goal.
there you go. And then it's good.
I've said many times that I want to be a part of somebody's life, not their entire life.
There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, I want to rank below the kids, the husband, and the dog. That's where I want to be.
And Jen, I'm sorry I cut you off. You were talking about the website and dog people. And,
Oh yeah. So yeah, if you don't have an animal that would vouch for you, I might not be willing to work with you, but you can always call and we can see if it's the right fit. 561-577-6136 is if you want to reach me on the telephone, provided the electronic grid is still working.
Right. JenniferGomez.com. It's much easier.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
JenniferGomez.com is easier to remember.
If you Google Jennifer Gomez lawyer, you will find her.
Yep, I'm like the first 10 things that show up.
Very wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Well, this is great. It's cool to have friends and guests. This is
yes,
awesome.
and again, thank you sincerely for doing what you do. It's it super it just hits home for me. So the fact that you saw this as a need and decided that I'm going to take care of it. I couldn't give you any greater compliment than to say that I appreciate it, because I know, and it's wonderful that you decided that there was this need for it and you did it, because it's so easy to complain. So easy to complain, and it's a whole other thing to say that I'm going to change it. So
I really appreciate that. It is actually, I'm the lucky one. I am the one that is privileged to get to work with each and every one of the Tomorrow's Rainbow families. But thank you so much.
thank you.
It's special shout out to Mike for being like the pillow barrier between me and Jen, like with the floating head behind us. Yeah, there it is. All right. Usually I'm blocking him, but I can't.
Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Exactly. We need a curtain. That'd be great. All right. Well, we'll do this again next week. You'll be in town next Tuesday, Rich?
Yeah.
Rich
Yes,
and I will do this
yes,
again next
yes,
Tuesday.
I will be. Oh no, wait. What's next? What day is next Saturday? No. Yes, no, I'll be here. My next show is on the 13th. So.
All right. Rich has shows. He does shows. No one wants to hear about that, though.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not.
you joining us for Jeopardy, Rich?
You want me to come today?
Yeah.
I'll join.
All
Now
right.
watch. You're gonna have jinx me, and I'm gonna get one wrong today.
You've been saying that for a year now.
Yeah, I know, but
All right, cool.
one day I'm gonna be right,
That's probably true. One
which
day
is
we'll-
interesting, right? What's the irony there? One day I'm gonna be right about being wrong.
That's awesome. Very good. Well, we'll see you back Tuesday. Jen and Abby probably won't be here. Never know though.
Just as a viewer.
As a viewer, you'll be watching as always. Yeah.
And if you type in, you see you can get your stuff up there.
Yeah, right. That's right. If you want to be like Susan and get your name and lights, it's possible. You know, come join our pixels. Cool. All right. Well, thank you all. We will see you next Tuesday. In the meantime, have a great day, and may the force be with you. Adios.
Bye.
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 Oh, look at that. Mike's the best.
That's awesome.
Stellar. All right. There y'all. Wait, did you spell everything right? Yeah, you did. Good job. All right. Goodbye.